I left the office slow, careful. The kind of careful you use when you know a snake is somewhere in the grass, but you can't see where it's coiled. The streets outside were alive with movement. Hawkers calling, taxis honking, rain slapping the pavement. But beneath it all, I felt it. The weight of eyes following. Gray Cap was out there. My footsteps echoed louder than they should have, and behind me, faint but steady, another set. I turned a corner, slipped into an alley where the lamplight barely touched. The wet ground glistened like oil, and the walls pressed close. His footsteps followed, measured, unhurried. I stopped, let the silence stretch. "Looking for someone?" I asked the dark. The city beyond the alley sounded distant, muffled, like I'd stepped into another world. No words came from the dark, just the whisper of leather shoes shifting closer. Then instinct took over. I bolted. The city blurred. Water splashed underfoot. Neon signs flickered overhead. Dogs scattered from the sudden thunder of my steps. My lungs burned, but I didn't dare slow down. Behind me, Gray Cap followed. Not frantic, not desperate. He moved like a predator that already knew where I was heading. Left turn, right turn. Another alley, a narrow staircase. My feet slammed wood, my breath rattled, but his rhythm never broke. I glanced back once, too quick. His face stayed hidden under that brim, but his outline was clear. Tall, lean, with a patience that cut deeper than anger. He wasn't chasing me to catch me. He was chasing me to let me know I couldn't outrun him. That's when I realized something. He wasn't alone. A second shadow peeled off the street, lingered by a parked car. Watching, not moving. Another pair of eyes, maybe more. Gray Cap wasn't just one man. He was the face of something larger. I cut left, vaulted a trash bin, slid between two market stalls shuttered for the night. My breath came harsh, but his footsteps didn't falter. 1 block, 2, then 3, and then silence. I spun around, chest heaving. The alley was empty. No Gray Cap, no watchers, nothing but rain. But I knew better. He wasn't gone. He was letting me know he could have caught me if he wanted to. The message was clear. I was being toyed with. By the time I got back to my apartment, the city felt heavier. I poured 2 fingers of Williamson whiskey, set the flash drive on the desk, and stared at it. A tiny piece of metal holding secrets men were willing to kill for. I plugged it in. The screen filled with files, contracts, spreadsheets, memos, proof of everything I'd seen scattered on Tobi's office floor. And then, just as quickly, they began to vanish. One after another, deleted by something I couldn't stop. The drive was burning itself clean. I yanked it out, but too late. Everything was gone, except one file, a single survivor, buried deep. Its title, Project M. Blueprints for a construction site. Dockside. Pier 7. Accounts tied to faceless companies. Money funneling in from places no one could trace. And buried in the numbers, a name. Tobi. He hadn't just stumbled onto this. He'd been ready to expose it. And now he was gone. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The rain outside seemed louder. There was something wrong with the blueprints, not just the lines of steel and concrete. The design included rooms that didn't exist in normal construction, sealed storage, hidden basements, sections marked off with nothing but the letter M. And then there was a phrase scribbled in the metadata, Phase 1 complete. Phase 1 of what? The question gnawed at me. Whatever Project M was, it was bigger than money, bigger than Tobi, maybe bigger than me. The phone buzzed on my desk. Unknown number, I answered. A voice, the same distorted snarl from the night before. "Detective Kazeem, you're making mistakes. Walk away." The line hissed, waiting. I let the silence drag, then answered the only way I knew how. "If you want me gone," I said, "you'll have to do better than phone calls." The click that followed wasn't just the end of a call. It was the sound of a target locking onto my back. Sleep doesn't come easy when a man in a gray cap watches you from the street, the kind of stare that clings even when you close your eyes. By the time dawn cracked through the blinds, I'd smoked half a pack, and the rain outside had finally slowed to a drizzle. Lagos was still restless, but quieter, the lull before the city started shouting again. Tobi's office haunted me. The scattered files, the ledger burned at the edges, the flash drive humming in my pocket like a guilty secret. I hadn't dared plug it in last night. Something about it felt alive, like a rattlesnake in a shoebox. But the city doesn't wait, and neither do the men chasing shadows. I left the flat before the sun could properly rise. Streets wet, neon signs still buzzing, newspaper boys calling out headlines nobody trusted. My Uber driver didn't ask questions. He only glanced once in the mirror at the circles under my eyes, then kept his mouth shut. Smart man. The drive felt long, every intersection heavy with suspicion. A black sedan lingered too long in traffic behind us. A pair of motorbikes sped past, then slowed down, glancing back at my cab. Lagos is a city of eyes, and every pair felt like it belonged to Grey Cap. When I finally stepped out at the pier, the air slapped me awake. Salt and oil, the stink of fish guts. The sea was a restless beast, waves gnawing at the wooden pylons. Pier 7 wasn't the kind of place for tourists. It was the kind of place deals were made at midnight, and bodies were sometimes left behind. I walked slow, coat pulled tight against the breeze. The pier stretched into fog, the horizon swallowed whole. But halfway down, I found what I'd come for. Faint footprints pressed into damp wood, a trail leading toward the end of the dock, too fresh to ignore. I crouched, tracing one print with my finger, smaller than mine. Could be Tobi's, could be bait. The silence was too thick, the kind of quiet that meant someone was choosing their moment. Then it hit, the sharp whistle of movement. I twisted just as a shadow lunged from the fog, a figure in gray cap. His arms swung, metal flashing, a knife, in broad daylight. I must be poking the hornet's nest. I caught his wrist, the blade slicing air where my ribs had been a second ago. My fist drove into his gut. He grunted, staggered, but didn't fall. The man moved like he'd done this before. Trained, sharp. The pier shuddered under our weight as we grappled, boards creaking like they'd split. Salt spray hit my face, my coat heavy with mist. He feinted left, then slammed his shoulder into me, knocking me against a piling. Pain rattled my spine. The knife came up again, gleaming. I shoved hard, knocking his arm wide, and the blade sank deep into the wood post instead of me. Splinters sprayed. We locked eyes in the fog. His, calm, cold. Mine, burning. I drove a knee up into his ribs. He hissed but twisted free, pulling the knife loose with a sickening rip of wood. Before I could press him, he stepped back into the fog, vanishing like smoke. I ran forward, ready to chase. Grey Cap had vanished. Only the waves answered back. Breathing hard, fists raw, I stood at the edge. Alone again, except not. On the last piling, nailed in with a rusted hook, a scrap of paper fluttered. 3 words smeared by the sea. Project M, stop. The knife fight had been nothing but punctuation. The real message was here, and Grey Cap wanted me to read it. I crushed the paper in my palm, the salt stinging my cuts. I didn't need the threat spelled out. Whoever Project M was, it was the reason Tobi vanished. And if Grey Cap was its guardian, then this game was only getting bloodier. And I was already standing too close to the edge. They thought fear would slow me down. They were wrong. The footprints were more than just marks on wet wood. They were whispers, half-spoken, waiting to be understood. I crouched lower, tracing the indentations with my fingertips. The size told me it wasn't Grey Cap. Too small, too light. Could have been Tobi, could have been anyone. But the way they pressed into the boards, it looked like someone walking fast, maybe running, someone being hunted. I pulled out a small notebook from my coat pocket, sketched the impression quickly. The habit of an investigator. You never know which detail matters until it's too late. Behind me, the pier groaned under the weight of something unseen. But when I turned, the fog was empty. I stood slowly, scanning the horizon. No shadow moved, no shape flickered. Still, the silence pressed in, heavier than before. I slipped the scrap of paper, the one with Project M scrawled across it, into my coat. Whoever left it wanted me rattled. Instead, it anchored me. If they were so desperate to warn me off, then this was where the truth lived. The city pulled me back in. By the time I reached the street, the markets were beginning to stir. Hawkers laying out wares, bread ovens coughing smoke, the smell of roasted corn mixing with engine fumes. I moved through it all like a ghost, head low, eyes searching. Lagos never hides its players completely. It just buries them under noise until you know where to listen. The cufflink caught my mind again. The one marked with an M I'd found on the ledger page back at Tobi's office. Expensive, unique. Men like Tobi didn't wear ornaments like that. Men with power did. Men who sat in back rooms deciding which streets drowned in floodwater and which ones got power restored first. So I followed the trail where jewelry spoke louder than money. The cab dropped me at Victoria Island, where boutiques gleamed behind tinted glass and guards leaned on polished rifles like furniture. My coat was too worn for the place, my shoes too scuffed, but that didn't matter. Predators walk into cages all the time. They just make sure the lock clicks from the inside. The shop was called Oriki Gold. Marble steps, brass handles polished until they burned in the morning light. Inside, air conditioning slapped the sweat from my face, soft jazz pouring from hidden speakers. Display cases shone with diamonds, watches, cufflinks set on velvet like sleeping kings. I didn't need to ask. My eyes went straight to the set that matched the one in my memory. Heavy, platinum, each etched with a single letter. M. The shopkeeper watched me with a careful smile, the kind reserved for men who look like they can't afford what they're staring at. I leaned closer to the glass, hands clasped behind my back. Those, I said quietly, pointing. She stepped closer, her perfume cutting through the air. The Majesty series, she whispered, as though the name itself carried weight. Only 10 were ever made, all custom ordered. Each pair belongs to very important men. Her hesitation wasn't shyness, it was fear. 10, I repeated. And who exactly are these important men? Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes betrayed her. She glanced toward the security camera in the corner, then back at me. Their names are not mine to say. I leaned in, voice low. Someone left one behind. At a crime scene. If you don't tell me who bought them, more will follow. Blood doesn't stain platinum, but it ruins everything else. Her hands twitched against her dress. She wanted to speak, She also wanted to live. Finally, she slid open a drawer, pulled out a leather-bound book, and let it rest on the counter. Her fingers hovered, not touching the pages. "I'll step away for a moment," she said softly. "If anyone asks, I never saw you." Then she walked into the back room, leaving the ledger open. Names stared back at me in neat black ink. Politicians, oil executives, a judge. And at the bottom of the list, written with a heavier hand, smudged slightly at the corner, Tobi. The world seemed to still. Tobi hadn't just stumbled across Project M. He'd been closer to its fire than anyone knew. And now so was I. Victoria Island never feels clean, no matter how much glass they build over it. The towers glitter, the clubs pump music into the night, but under it all, secrets rot. I stepped out of Orikee Gold with the weight of answers heavier than I wanted to carry, and the cufflink burned in my pocket like it was alive. 10 cufflinks, 10 men. A neat circle of power, sealed off from the city that bent under its shadow. I didn't know where Tobi fit into that circle yet, but the questions were multiplying, and the answers were circling me like vultures. It was around 5 p.m. The evening air felt wrong. Too thick, too still. My steps echoed sharper than they should have, and that's when I felt it. The second rhythm behind me. A beat just out of sync with mine. Not loud, not rushing. Calm. The kind of steps made by someone who already knew I couldn't shake them. I didn't turn, not at first. I kept my head low, collar up against the drizzle, cigarette dangling smoke into the humid air. In Lagos, paranoia isn't a sickness, it's survival. And right then, survival told me I wasn't alone. The crowd thinned the farther I walked from the glass towers. The laughter of the rich faded into the background hum of generators, and the smell shifted from perfume and leather seats to exhaust fumes and fried plantain oil. Somewhere in that shift, I risked a glance at the glass window of a shuttered boutique. Behind my reflection, sharp, tired eyes under the brim of my hat. I saw it, a figure, tall, still, distant, a brim tilted low, gray cap. The glass lied about a lot of things, but not about him. My pulse ticked faster. I turned a corner fast, testing the shadow. The rain-slick streets narrowed, gutters overflowing, trash bins, broken glass, the smell of piss and stale beer. For a moment, silence followed. Lagos traffic swallowed sound, but his rhythm cut through it, steady, patient, hunting. Then, there it was again. Steps, steady, patient. Close enough to let me know I was being tracked, far enough to keep me guessing. It wasn't the first time Greycap had shown himself, but it was the first time I wondered if he wanted me to see him. A hunter doesn't reveal himself unless the chase is part of the game. I ducked into a narrow alley, heart working harder than my legs. The walls pressed in tight, concrete sweating from the damp. My shoes slapped water with every step, and still I heard him. Always one step behind, never hurried. If I stopped, I knew he would too. If I ran, he'd just let me know he was there again. Later, when I least expected it, paranoia gnawed at me. Was it one man, or many, trading places to keep the pressure constant? Did Greycap even exist, or was he a mask worn by whoever needed me nervous? I couldn't tell anymore. The only truth was the eyes on my back. A hand snatched at my shoulder. Instinct took over. I spun, shoving hard. The man staggered back into the wall, hood half off, not Greycap at all. A decoy, paid muscle. He lunged with a blade flashing in the wet light. I ducked low. The knife scraped brick, sparks flying. My fist connected with his gut. He wheezed, but another pair of steps thundered closer from the far end of the alley. Thugs. 2 of them. Maybe more. The decoy swung again, wild. I let him overcommit, grabbed his wrist and slammed it into the wall until the knife clattered to the ground. A knee to his stomach folded him. I didn't wait. I ran. The chase spilled onto the main street, horns blaring, headlights flashing across the rain-slick road. Shouts behind me, footsteps pounding. I zigzagged through traffic, nearly clipped by a Danfo bus, the driver screaming curses. My chest burned, lungs fighting against the wet night air. I cut across, slipped into another alley, then ducked behind a delivery truck idling by a shuttered store. And that's when the voice came. Not from behind me, from the side. A low rasp slipped out of the dark like it had always been waiting. "You're being followed, detective." I froze. The alley seemed to shrink around me. Not the hunters this time. A small figure edged out of the dark, thin, nervous, eyes darting, clothes torn at the cuffs. He didn't chase. He didn't threaten. His face was pitted, his eyes darting like he expected the night to bite him at any second. He didn't ask for my name. Didn't need it. He just slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand, so quick I almost dropped it. His voice cracked, thin and broken. "Go here. Tonight. Someone will talk." Before I could open my mouth, he was gone, melted back into the alley shadows like he'd never been there. I unfolded the paper. An address. Downtown. A motel I knew by reputation, not by comfort. A place where secrets rot before they're told. Behind me, silence pressed hard. The second rhythm was gone. No more footsteps. No gray cap. Just me and the address burning holes in my palm. And then, across the rooftops, I saw him. Gray cap, not chasing, not running, just watching. A silhouette carved against the skyline. I pocketed the note and forced my legs to move. I walked fast, then faster. The paranoia didn't fade. The city felt rigged, every corner loaded, every window a watchtower. By the time I reached the mainland, Victoria Island's glass palaces were nothing but a dream I couldn't afford. The motel waited where Lagos kept its broken promises, a place where the paint peeled, the bulbs flickered, and the air smelled like mold and regret. That's where the answers were pulling me, into the underbelly, into the dark, where whispers turned into truths, and truths had a habit of killing men like Tobi, men like me. Whatever waited in that motel, it was the kind of truth that didn't survive daylight.